I mean, honestly, I just thought there would have been more leather jackets.
Unlike other classics, West Side Story grows younger.
People in the 60s did that. 50s and 60s, it was all this and happened. Today we have West Side Story. To avoid any confusion, because this will be out probably a week or two before the Steven Spielberg directed remake of West Side Story. So I got the chance. Fathom Events likes to do we'll bring back the old films to see them on the silver screen. And so I was like, okay, well, good timing. I might as well go see the original. I've never seen the original, and I like musicals, and I hear a lot about this one being critically acclaimed. So let's see it and then be able to compare and contrast to the remake. It was interesting because it ended up kind of being what I thought it would, but at the same time, not really. So just to preface it, and there's not a lot to get into, I mean there could be, but I'm going to choose not to because just this is the way I'm structuring this particular review. This West Side Story, the film, the film musical came out in 1961, officially making this the oldest film that I reviewed on my channel so far. I think. So, yeah, I didn't realize it came out that long ago. I mean, that's the 60s. So, there's a Broadway play before this in the 50s that was then adapted to this film format back in 1961. And this film not only had a shitload of nominations, but won a lot of them. And, historically speaking, for good reason. So this is actually an interesting case. I don't think I've covered a film before that was co-directed by two people. Jerome Robbins, who, according to his IMDb from back in his day, not much in the way of film. I think the West Side Story might have been, unless I'm mistaken, it looked like, aside from an actual award show, this was the only thing that he ever helped someone to direct. So he had a lot of experience with, I'm sure, theater work, plays, Broadway musicals. I mean, he worked on some in the past as well. But in terms of bring that to film, this was his first step in there, but it makes sense because you have somebody to kind of consult for the theatrical part of it. The other director being Robert Wise, who did have an actual filmography, which surprisingly enough incorporates some Star Trek films from the mid to late 70s. So in addition to working in theater, this guy kind of had more of the film angle for it, it seems. Granted, I only learned all this about West Side Story today, so I have no context, I have no history, like a lot of films I seem to watch, and I think it comes with the handicap of my age. I don't have a lot of context for a lot of this, so I'm going based off of my very little to no research on the subject, because why not? We're flying by the seat of our pants over here. In terms of the cast, I mean, there's a very large cast. I mean, it's two rival games, but you have, your two standouts. The guy, I mean, he's a guy, he's fine. No need to go into him too much. But the girl I did want to make a note about, Natalie Wood, who played Maria, for one, I mean, killed it, of course. It was a great role. Both leads have great voices. She did excellent work. But for so Fathom Events had this guy, Mankiewicz, who did a little preface before the film and kind of went over some of the more important historical and cinematic contributions this film had. And from what I understand, Natalie Wood basically won, I believe the Oscar was for her performance, but she won, and she was the first Latina to win in this circumstance, and that's early 60s, which is huge, but it was historical for the Academy. And granted, the film won a lot of awards, but yeah, it's worth acknowledging her accomplishment in particular, as well as kind of that community to be, proud for what they did. I usually try to do pros and cons. I understand why this film has the acclaim that it does, film, musical, what have you. Direction and cinematography, I gotta say, for being the year that it was, and I'm trying to put myself into that, mental frame of reference for, being 1961, direction overall is great. I mean, it's fairly simple, but they do a few tricks here and there. It's the cinematography with the direction in certain scenes that, when combined, make some really standout moments. Overall, Did I enjoy West Side Story? No, I actually didn't. I don't think it was bad per se. I get why it's good, but I did not enjoy myself. I was kind of, I hate to say it, but, and again, this is a review of the film on its own merits, but also I'm going to be a bit biased, as always, because it's based on my level of enjoyment. I thought it was kind of boring. Like, maybe it's because I'm caught up in the excitement of today's cinema, but come on. You're talking to the guy who loved Pig, and Pig is not John Wick with the pig. Pig is an intense, raw, emotional drama. Granted, I'm comparing something from an entirely different century here, but beside the point. I get it. This film is very important for what it is. There's a lot of dialogue and a lot of moments in all this. I mean, clear, obvious social dilemmas they chose to tackle, especially back then, for like racial intolerance, as well as sexism, as well as just like America's urban youth and the wars they fought with each other, and just that kind of, and technically even police brutality. They don't go full tilt into police brutality, but there's a commentary there to be made about the cops as well, but that's like a B plot at this point. It's mainly about racial intolerance, as far as I can tell, and it brings some good things to light, and it's pretty bold for saying and doing what it did. Overall, I mean, it kind of leans into some stereotypes, but at the same time, it tries to show you like what the problems are and what these problems can cause. There's not really any like solution by the end of it, and I get that that's the point. This film, and I mean, it's obvious, but this film is heavily inspired by such works as Romeo and Juliet, just in terms of like a tragic romance, but also what happens when people are fighting these wars and feuds over reasons they can, only chalk up to, oh, I don't like him because where he came from, or I don't like her because where she came from. Most of the cast is good. There's some really... Let me tell you this. It's funny, I was thinking several times in this movie somebody calls somebody else daddy-o, and I'm like, man, millennials kind of adopt that nowadays with our whole, daddy chill. It's funny to see the similarities and yet the wide valleys of difference between the talk of the youth back then and now. Honestly, here's the thing. I don't care who you are, how mad you are at me, or if I don't like you or not. If you call me daddy-o, that's not a bad nickname. I kind of want to bring daddy-o back. There are some ones in there I could live without, but that was just a funny one to me. What's the crazy part is that there's a few standout like songs, like ensemble numbers in it that are really good. I could tell that there were some songs that had a lot of notoriety and were very well known for what they were because I recognized them, and I've never seen this musical before in my life. There were like 2 or 3 songs that I was like, I've heard that before. There's songs you just one way or another, they permeate the world, There were good tracks in it. The score was very hit or miss for me. There's some songs to me that felt so I don't know about forced, but they just did not flow naturally. I mean, at least you have with a musical like Mamma Mia, yes, it's ABBA. Yes, people randomly and unrealistically break out into big musical numbers with everybody on screen is involved, but it's contextual, or oftentimes it is diegetic to the narrative. But in West Side Story, it felt like a lot of times when someone would they'd be like, yeah, I know, we're gonna get those guys. Did you know that these guys we're gonna get? It's like, what? I'm paraphrasing, but it'd be the weirdest transition from dialogue into a song. I was just sitting there like, oh, okay. And I'm like, is it me? Is it because I'm young and it's a sign of the times where, the old films aren't doing it? No, because I can give you some solid example, like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Dude, I loved Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. That's from decades ago, but that works. It's not a serious subject matter, I get it. It's not as important of a message, but dude, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, again, subject matter, not about racial tensions, but I mean, there's plenty of messages literally messages that come through the songs, but I mean, again, I'm just giving you more examples. They're a bit kooky and wonky, but you can make a serious drama about this. Even Belfast, which is a movie I recently reviewed on my channel, Belfast does a better job of bringing, it's a more compelling narrative, was what I'm saying. I didn't find West Side Story to be that compelling. I mean, I kind of knew it was going to end in tragedy without even knowing the ending of how the story ends, but it was just kind of watching just a narrative that you kind of, reading a book that you don't really know the ending to, but you kind of can figure out the ending to. It's the vibes that I got. And honestly, that's all I have to say. There's not a lot of notes I have for it. It definitely feels too long, and I will say the opening sequence is one of the weird, I almost thought the film had messed up, because it has one of those, I mean, to be fair, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and older musicals do it too, where you have the intro, which is 5, maybe more minutes of like music from the film with some, like, in this case, like a really weird color changing, like West Side Story-ish logo title card. You have the first half of the film, an intermission, those are always nice, and then the ending of the film. And I like how some movies will try to bring that back, like Hateful Eight. Bless Tarantino for trying to bring me back to the old-fashioned feel of a roadshow, where you have a 3+ hour film and it feels like an event. It feels like you're watching a performance that has an intermission. But I just want to say, West Side Story's opening little still card with the music was just kind of weird to me. I don't know, maybe I'm showing my age, maybe I'll get lit up about this, but West Side Story doesn't graze my top 5 or even my top 10 like favorite musicals, and I don't even know what my top 10 favorite musicals are, but I guarantee you West Side Story is not in there. It has some really neat shots, a few decent moments where I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and I was just kind of waiting for something to happen. I don't know what, but like, I don't know, the movie feels like a lot of just filler with some like decent musical numbers throughout. I will say, I really wish that Gaines these days like solved all the disputes through interpretive dance. Like every single time. Again, I get it, musical, that's fine. I have no qualms. I merely think it's funny, and I like the idea of like modern Gaines and juvenile delinquents all like, whether they're prancing on the streets and doing some twirls or whether they're fighting each other, it's all through interpretive dance. That tickles me. That's what would happen. My rating will be reflected by 2 primary things, which is 1, my lack of enjoyment of the film, but also 2, how I recognize the importance of the film and what the musical meant. I'm very curious to see how it gets adapted into the remake and if I'll enjoy the remake more. But in the meantime, I would say the original 1961 West Side Story, for me, again, personally, is a low 3 out of 5. Leave it at a low 3 out of 5. Again, that's the main 2 factors on that are the importance of it, the fact that it is well directed, cinematography is good, and there are some solid scenes that have these really unique moments to them visually or from a directionary standpoint. And it's very important what was accomplished with this musical. I get that. But also, as just a musical period, I've seen better personally, and I've heard better. Again, this might be a hot take, because typically people don't speak very ill of this musical, but I wasn't a huge fan. I did not enjoy it, and I have absolutely no desire to see it again. So, honestly, it's a shame to me, but, you know, it is what it is. So that's all I have to say about West Side Story. Like I said, it won't be the next film that I review, but in about a week or 2, the coming days, there will be a review posted for when I do go see the remake of West Side Story, which is Steven Spielberg's like current project. So we'll see how that goes. Baby Driver's in it. That's kind of neat. But in the meantime, thank you guys and gals so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. Goodbye, travelers.